This is the American Indians, Indigenous Peoples Truths. Justice for all, the most dangerous show on media anywhere. OCO, Leslie, Halito, how are you?
Halito, Chimechukma.
Good to see your face.
Good to see you too.
All right. Would you do us the honor and the privilege of doing a land acknowledgement for us?
Yes, I will. Let's pause for a moment to acknowledge the traditional stewards of the lands that we reside on. In my land, I am the Lenape people. We're the traditional stewards of this land, and especially their ancestors, descendants, and all indigenous people who live now and have ever lived on this land that we call Turtle Island and beyond. But more than acknowledgement, let's honor and support our existing indigenous communities to help them continue their land-based practices, traditions, and way of life by dispelling false narratives about their history and people while promoting their authentic truths, helping them heal from past wrongs and offenses, and assisting them in protecting and restoring back to health the land, nature, and the water, which brings life. Amen.
Thank you so much, Leslie.
You're very welcome.
We have an amazing guest tonight who just happens to be my adopted nephew. And the very first sweat lodge that we did here on this land, it was Leon Leadercharge that was in Washington at the time. And he brought some other people with him who have now become lifelong friends, like Diana Kanoy, Gerald Kanoy Sr., his son, Junior, and his daughter, Nikki. And I just want to tell Leon right now, thank you for those connections, Leon. Okay.
Before we start, one of the things that we were promoting primarily in our show is our human connection stories, just where we do a brief story about some history or something that most people don't know about. So we're going to do we're going to keep that tradition up of doing our human connection story before we bring in our guests. So let's go ahead and do that right now.
Okay.
So what I wanted to bring to us tonight, just to have a brief discussion on, is that we just came from celebrating Black History Month in the month of February, and now in March we are celebrating St. Patrick's Day. And why are these two related? Well, I specifically chose this topic because of the history that most people don't know about the Irish when they came here during the famine. Now, let me just give you some brief history. Prior to the transatlantic slave trade, everybody was looked at via a socioeconomic stance. They were not looked at as of any color or anything like that. People basically sold themselves into indentured so that they could have a better way of life in this country. So there was always this intermingling of populations, regardless of what color you were. and not until the transatlantic slave trade, and not until laws were implemented where they were causing the United States to be put in some type of a caste system where we identified as either white, black, indigenous, or native, or other. So I specifically wanted to talk about this because outside of my indigenous heritage, I am of Irish heritage as well. And how is it that two people that were of two different races were allowed to marry one another, have children, and community with one another when this was against the law? And like I said prior to that, when people came here, nobody looked at your color. So this is the case of my family. But I wanted people to realize that Irish people here in America were considered less than Black people when they came here. And Elder, you've actually spoken about this in the past. This is something people don't know. What is your take on this? So that just so I can fill it in while I'm going through the slides.
You know, I used to when I was a little boy. My grandfather, he was the Shoshone in my family. He owned the last set of working stables in Washington, D.C. So in the mornings, I would ride with him during the time that I was not in school. And we would go over to a place called Hagen's Plumbing Supply. And I met Petey. And I would go over there every day with him and spend the day with him playing. And then one day we were playing in his father's office, grandfather's office. And he says, what do you want to do now? I said, what are all those signs back there behind your grandpa's desk? He said, let's look at them. And the sign said, help wanted, Irish need not apply. Mm. So that was my first experience with racism. Now, I remember back in history when there was a famine in Ireland that Native American people, tribes here, put their little money together, food and everything else, and sent the Irish help. So we have a very long history together as members of the same family, the human family. And later on in life, I got a job working for the federal government. And who should I meet? My boss was Peter Hagen. And then he said to me one day, he said, you don't remember me? I said, no. He said, I'm Petey. I said, no, you're not. He said, yes, I am. So we had a real good relationship, even as adults. Mm-hmm. So, you know, people need to stop looking at people and trying to judge them because of the color of their skin or the color of their eyes or anything else, because we're all members of this one family that the Creator put here on earth to survive, the human family. That's
right.
Yeah.
But I wanted to show the audience some of the depiction of the Irish when they came here to the United States. I mean, they made them look like baboons. They did horrible depictions of the people, of the women, of the community as a whole. And it was not until later that they started utilizing the Irish to police Black people. And this is where our separation began, because they wanted to say that white was better than Black. And in order for the Irish to succeed, which is what happens here in America, they pit us all against each other from a community standpoint. And they were like, well, you're white and you're better, so you don't mingle with these Black people, but we'll give you jobs as police officers so that you could police the population, which was probably the destruction of our relationships.
Yes, it was.
So it's estimated that of all of the African Americans, like 38% of African Americans here in the United States are of Irish heritage. They have Irish DNA. And this was very common in the South and in other areas and stuff like this. So this is a very common ancestry that we have. So when people say that, when Black people say that they are Irish, chances are they probably are. Mm-hmm. But I wanted to give acknowledgement to my family because my family is from Galway. They're from a place called Irecourt. And one thing that my grandmother instilled in us, my grandmother Mary, was that we always remember our heritage. So today, when I remember her during St. Patrick's Day in the kitchen making soda bread and corned beef and hash and cabbage. Her cabbage was
Mhm.
really good in celebration because it was what her grandmother actually taught her how to cook, and her grandmother was the Irish woman that married. Interestingly, also enough, my grandmother who married a black man, he was indentured. He was working on a steamship in Missouri, and it was outlawed in the United States at that time, especially in the area of Illinois, that they could not marry if they were of a different race. Because she fell in love with him, and they got married by proxy. They had a black woman stand in and say that she was Mary Adams because that was her name. They
Mhm.
got married, they had children. And when her family finally, the reason why she fell in love with him is because he used to steal food for her family that was working on the ship. They were extremely poor. And as the cook, he would take food that he had prepared and he would give it to her family. And that's how she fell in love with him. And as a result of that, now, there was this large family of children, that were created as a result of that. Eventually, her family paid for him to be out of his indentured. Once her family got established and they were living and they had their own farmland in Jerseyville, Illinois, they paid for him to be free.
Oh my God, your grandma was beautiful.
Wasn't she?
Oh my.
Wasn't she? Everybody seems to think that she looks kind of like Lena Horne. I have better pictures of her. This is just one of my favorite pictures of her. But yeah,
Mhm.
my
Okay,
grandma
thank you.
Mary. You're
Thank
very
you.
welcome. So, once again, I just want to encourage our audience to really look at the history between the Irish and African Americans here in the United States. You'd be very surprised.
And Native Americans.
And Native Americans, yes. There is actually a monument in Ireland to the Choctaw Nation who
Yep,
helped them during the potato famine.
exactly. Exactly. Thank you so much, Leslie.
You're welcome.
I always enjoy this part of the show.
You're welcome.
So, our guest tonight is Leon Leadercharge. Where is he?
Let's bring him in.
Okay. Hey, Leon, how you doing?
Amigo.
Pretty good. How's everyone doing on Betuash Day? Good day, everyone.
Hello.
Okay. So let me introduce my nephew to everybody. I love this man. His name is Leon Leadercharge, and he is an enrolled member of the Rosebud Sioux Tribe of South Dakota and also a part of the Oglala Lakota Sioux Tribe in Pine Ridge, South Dakota. Leon holds a bachelor's degree of science in addiction counseling and prevention from the University of South Dakota, with an emphasis in treatment and prevention. Leon has an interest in helping tribal communities, expanding culturally appropriate evidence based practices, expanding tribal research, history, Lakota, and all Native American culture, tribal law and treaty formation of federal tribal policy, suicide prevention, healing from trauma, and the betterment of all tribal nations and communities. Leon Leadercharge recently successfully completed a graduate policy internship at South Dakota U.S. Senator Mike Round's office and recently worked as an access advisor for the South Dakota Jumpstart South Dakota Board of Regents, a program that focuses on Native American college recruitment and retention at South Dakota's public post-secondary residential institutions. Currently, my nephew is attending graduate school at the University of South Dakota and works full-time for the Office of Legislative Affairs at the Rosebud Sioux Reservation. Leon.
I have to say, Uncle Jay, that resume is about 5 years old.
I know you've done a lot more since.
Yeah, I got my graduate degree finished, and then I'm working on a second master's. I'm almost done with that, and then I work for 3 Star Government Solutions, and we provide technical assistance across the nation in the indigenous communities for
Mhm.
suicide prevention, mental health, substance misuse, and I also work part time at the local White Buffalo Calf Women's Society domestic violence shelter here in Rosebud. So part-time there and then full-time at the Substance Abuse Mental Health Service Administration Tribal Technical Assistance Center.
You all, ever since I've known you, you've had more jobs than allowed.
And that's, I know, right? I was like, I don't know if I should take another responsibility onto my lap, but it's just like I think the good creators lining me up with some good work. So, and I'm very passionate about it.
I know that. I know that personally. But what I want to say to everybody today, Leon had an opportunity today to use his skills in suicide prevention because there was someone on the res trying to commit suicide. Am I right, Leon?
Yeah, we had a
About it.
young person and who has two little toddlers with them, and they try to complete suicide. And after the show today, we're taking them to the local medicine man. We're gonna take them into the sweat lodge and do what's called the Wopa Kinte ceremony. We're gonna wipe the trauma off the spirit, the nari, the DNA. So we're gonna start working from a traditional medicine ceremony approach, and then the relative also got some mental health care too. So we're in shock because I lost a younger brother to suicide in 2008.
Oh my
The
goodness.
same way he was 14. So that's why I do this work, Jay. That's why I met you. I took a healthy risk, and I've never been to the East Coast, and I interned at the SAMHSA Suicide Prevention Branch and trying to learn from the top down how the funding that's allocated for tribal communities and why it's not doing what it needs to be doing.
Okay. Leslie, you look like you got something to say.
You know, trauma is generational, and it really is. I think that this is what we have gone through as Indigenous people or people of color in this country is something that runs very deep. And even though we seem to function normally, that trauma is still deep seated. It takes one thing to trigger it, to activate it. Actually, I want the audience to understand that when we deal with trauma from a medicinal standpoint, from a traditional Indigenous standpoint, understand that not only are we infiltrating the DNA, but we're also basically also infiltrating the spirit around it, because it is a spirit. And so these practices are necessary because that cleansing is something that we understand is something that's deep within our core. It's something that we come from the beginning of time. And I want to applaud you, Leon, for taking that on, because this is a very hard walk to do that, to deal with people's trauma, to see it on a consistent basis. But also, it is extremely rewarding when you see people that are delivered of it. I just commend you for doing that. And I don't think that whatever you're doing is going to be ever enough. You take on whatever the Creator gives you, because He's going to give you all you need to finish your work. And it's a good work. It's very good medicine.
Absolutely. So, Leon, let me ask you this. After you've gone through helping somebody with their traumatic trauma, how do you get that off of you? Because, when we talk to people that are having issues, that becomes a part of our makeup.
Yeah, I have people like you, Uncle Jay, I trust and I share my feelings with and my frustrations and challenges. And I also go to traditional sweat lodge ceremony and I exercise. And I also, like I said, I have personal mentors and professional mentors I utilize, because like there's a thing called vicarious traumatization. Just by us knowing someone's trauma, we inherit that, or in the soul we absorb it into not only our body, our mind, our spirit, our heart. And we have to take care of ourselves and do self-care. So a lot of my free time is doing self-care. I like being outside, hiking. I like just do hauling firewood for the sweat lodge. I like going to have coffee with someone and just get their feedback on certain life instances and And I really like visiting with my elders, constantly asking them, how was it back in your day? And just letting them talk. I sat in front of elders for 4 hours straight, and I didn't have to say one word. Just listen to the good old stories. Always hear the stories of resilience, right? Even though we're in this challenging times, I mean, our people before us and all our communities have dealt with poverty, extreme poverty. But what you always hear is you don't hear the problems. You hear what did they do to find the resilience in their families, in their homes, and individual lives. There's always good stories based in cultural values.
Hmm. You know, I had a good friend of mine. Well, he's still with us, Tex Hall, who is the former chief of the three affiliated tribes of North Dakota and past president of the National Congress of American Indians. And I would always ask him, I said, how do you deal with so much? He said, you have to get in touch with your spirit, your ancestors, and dig deep because the solutions are there. You just have to listen to your elders. And that's what I do. Okay.
Leon, can you explain to our audience how you got involved with this? And once again, I want to give my condolences about your youngest sibling. Um, it seems to be something that's really hitting our young people the hardest these days. And I'm hearing so much about all of these suicides that are happening with young people. Consistently. I just read something the other day where a young boy that was bullied at school, he's 13 years old, committed suicide. You know, can you explain to us how you got involved with this and why it is so important to you?
Well, I lived on a reservation all my life, and I still live here in Rosebud and Oglala in Pine Ridge, Oglala Sioux Tribe reservation. I'm back and forth, but I grew up around all my uncles and my male role models were all alcoholics and drug users. At some point, I've had a very few non-alcoholic, non-substance use male mentors in my life, and I have a great mother. She's always talking about changing that generational paradigm, and what part of that was committing to sobriety
Hmm.
back in 2005. Took me almost lost my life a few times because of alcohol use and drug use, and I put it all down in 2005, and then I found I started was going to church right here and there, but when I found the local medicine, man, that's what really helped me. The spiritual ceremonies, excuse me, the Lakota language, the songs, the culture, the dance. It just kind of gave me a sense of like belonging and a sense of self efficacy, a sense of self pride, self esteem, and a positive outlook on life. And I've looked for that solitude in not only alcohol, drugs, relationships, gambling, and I never really found it until I connected with my cultural ceremony. That's when I was at peace with myself. So
Hmm.
that kind of inspired me to change my life, and the work I'm doing is I've lost numerous cousins and numerous relatives to alcohol and drug use, indirectly and directly, and it's unfortunate because of the fact that I don't have that big of a family anymore like I used to. Extended family, and when you live on the reservation, extended family means everything to you. Now, we got a lot of young members of our family. They never seen Uncle Leon using alcohol, using drugs, and they never will see Uncle Leon. And actually, my nephews and I, we built one on Sweat Lodge. I've never had Uncle tell me that. We sat at the drum. We went to powwows. We learned about the language. We learned about the song, and that's how I got involved in doing the work. And now it's just kind of my job when I go out to indigenous communities across the nation. We do cultural protective factors facilitation. So it's pretty fun work for me. I wouldn't really call it a job.
It's what you enjoy doing. and it's what you have committed your life to, right?
Yep. And definitely, I always think of this. We're never stop learning. And in our ceremonies, we lost our medicine leader, and the ancestors told us in ceremony that he's still learning on the other side. So isn't that something? And then I
Yeah.
also had a professor tell me one time that I take a class every semester, and why are you looking at me weird? Well, maybe you're thinking, oh, I got a PhD and I need to, but I realize that I still keep learning every semester. And I'm like, wow, that's pretty neat. And I like people like that, right? We're open. We may not know the answers to everything, but we have a lot of information to share with people. And
Mhm.
that's the highest form of education is dialogue, exchanging ideas, exchanging wisdom, exchanging knowledge and experiences.
And culture exchange plays a big part in that.
Yeah, I love culture exchange, Jay. Uncle Jay, I go to so much communities, and when we leave the community after facilitation of historical trauma to historical resilience, um, it's like we get a hug and we leave this community. It's hard to leave because it's like a ceremony. You made relatives with this community, and that
Mhm.
cultural exchange happens. They give you gifts. I've got numerous gifts, and it's just like it's really an awesome feeling. No money can match that.
Mhm.
Yeah, it's so true. The sense of community that you get when you connect with one another and you support one another. And you said something that was really important: the significance of knowing your culture, your language, your songs, what they mean, your traditions, what they mean, which is something that has essentially been ripped away from us, or that most of us have fallen away from because we just got immersed in this
Got
world and this
got caught
society.
up. Got
Yeah, you
caught
get
up.
caught up in it. And in a way, if you think about it, it was designed for us to lose all of that so that we would not have that connectivity. So we would be lost. So we would be, thrown to the devices of the world, the thing that consumes us. Um, so let me ask you this regarding everything that you do. Since this is such a difficult subject matter that you deal with on a regular basis, what is your success rate? Like, what is it that, let's say if you had 10 people that were dealing with trauma that came to you, do you have 8 people walk away that are healed? Because this is a consistent journey. You have to understand whenever you are walking away from anything, be it alcohol, gambling, or whatever.
Mhm.
What is the success rate when done from the traditional standpoint? Sweat lodge, cleansing ceremonies, etc.
110%. The creator asked us to meet halfway, right? So it takes a lot of steps and effort to do what the ceremonies are suggesting. They don't tell you what to do. They only advise and coach. And when we go through our ceremonies, it's like our when I first start going into the traditional healing circle, I found guys in there that were 20, 40, 30 years sober. And they did exactly the same path I did. They started in sobriety. They went to an inpatient treatment program, went to AA, went to church. It was when they found the sweat lodge and the ceremonies. They've been sober since. And they didn't. They might have got the foundational values through the AA programs or the 12-step program, and I still go back off and on, or the churches. But it wasn't until they immersed themselves in who they are and the cultural protective factors that it really worked for them. They're alcohol and drug free.
Another thing, I think these young men or young people have found purpose for their lives. Why? Questions that I ask a lot of young people all the time. Why are you here? Well, no. Why are you here? Are you here to help somebody? Or are you here to do destructive things? Why are you here? And I've talked to a lot of young men, young black men, young native men, and other people, and they're lost. They don't understand. I said, well, you need to find your purpose, and when you find your purpose, then you know what to do with your life. I walk right into crowds of drug dealers on the corner, and I'm not afraid, because I know Wakantanka is always there watching me on my shoulders, right? And I'll just walk up to him, hey, how you guys doing today? We're okay. What do you want? I want to know what are you going to do with your life? You know, I said, I know what you're doing. You're out here selling drugs in your own community. This is your community. This is your support mechanism. People around you that look like you, that act like you. What are you doing? Are you going to change that paradigm, or are you going to continue to take a chance on being put in the ground or going to jail? What are you going to do with your life? And I've had quite a few young men that think about it. 5 of them went back to college and got a bachelor's degree. 2 of them are working on a master's degree. You know, we have to be more concerned about each other and about our young people, because as long as nobody's out there pointing the way, as long as there's nobody out there willing to give them a hug, as long as there's nobody out there that will just talk to them, they're lost. So it is our responsibility to take care of our folks, period. What do you think about that, Leon?
No, and I think that's exactly what we're talking about. Is, you know, we've made it through the hard part ourselves, and just coaching that young youth, and talking about different options they can have through education to becoming part of any workforce. And I think when a young person, a young male, finds his purpose in life, especially joining any kind of workforce, they find some type of self identity, self pride. So I really like those words, Jay, and I think those are important for that coaching aspect.
Even if you join the military, at least that's a place of structure.
Yep.
How many of our people have joined the military? Our people have volunteered per capita, the largest amount of people since the beginning of the so-called United States have joined the military and have done great things. And one question that I get is, well, why did you join the Marines? Well, before the white man came, we had a lot. And the little bit that we have left is domicile right here in the United States of America. So if somebody attacks the U.S., they're attacking us. And that's why we volunteer to protect our people.
You said something also about, education, the importance of education, and finding some type of identity through education. Let's speak to that, because you are somebody who has you're consistently learning. You have degrees and stuff like that. Can you explain to our youth out there who are still trying to find their way, the importance of why you must have an education, why it's important to consistently learn and continue to learn? And, once you stop with a degree, it doesn't mean that you stop there, that you must continue to learn. So, Leon, can you explain to us how that affected you getting an education, and also how that continues to transform you getting an education?
Whenever one of my mentors, he said, education is the greatest equalizer to social injustices. At the time, I really didn't know what that meant, but I wrote it down because it sounded good, right? And if you look at our marginalized communities, we're constantly being served the shorter end of the stick. So I think education really gives us that leverage to open those doors for us to become our own administrators in our own communities. Hey, at my own community here in the reservation, it's all non-natives that are administrators in some of these big, I would say we have the school district, which is a state entity. We have the Indian Health Services, which is a federal government entity. And we also have the Bureau of Indian Affairs, which is a federal government entity. Who runs most of those entities, who bring in most of the income to the reservation besides the tribe? All non-natives, especially our non-enrolled members. You need a degree to get into those types of jobs. So when I work with young people, I just try to push them into completing a bachelor's at the least, because you may not get the training for the job you're going to be, but when you succeed and finish that bachelor's degree, it just shows you can start something, you can finish it. You might not even be working in what you're trained for, but it puts you at the table, and that's what we need, and especially through cultural and our own Native American history and culture. My uncle once told me, he was a certified public accountant. My auntie's a medical doctor. My uncle's a psychologist. I have just tons of family, and my mother's a social worker. My sister's a social worker. I just have a lot of family who believed in Western education, higher education. But I had to pass the test, right? When I took intro to sociology at the University of South Dakota, which is a predominantly white institution, a PWI, they said all these great things about all these different groups of ethnic racial people, all these nice slides about them. But when it came to Native Americans, it was one slide. Most Native Americans are poor. Most Native Americans die early from alcoholism. And then they switched slides. So I was so upset. And I I had a friend, a mentor, and I told him, and he said, well, what are you gonna do about it? And I said, oh, I can't do nothing about it. I just gotta pass the test and get an A, right? He said, yes, there you go. So there's things I wasn't happy with in my Western education, but when I get to areas where I can change things, and I talk to 50 Native American youth, we're singing songs. They want to learn how to drum. They want to learn how to powwow. They want to learn how to do all their cultural activities. And when I leave that community, I'm like, wow, we planted seeds in these kids to be happy of who they are as Indigenous relatives. And my uncle said, the CPA, he said, Uncle, did you ever read this book? Did you ever read this book about Lakota people? And he said, who wrote the book? Oh, this author, this author. And he said, you know what to do with a book that's written about our people, not by our people? And I said, what's that? Chuck it as far as I can see. I was like, oh, wow, cool. So then I found a lot of authors that are Indigenous authors, especially from my nation. And oh, they were amazing books. So maybe someday I'll write a book.
I hope so. I hope so.
That would be awesome.
Yeah, because there are quite a few Native authors. Vine Deloria, God, I was just reading a book.
Luther Standing Bear.
Yeah.
Luther Standing Bear. He was good. Crow Dog. He has a good book.
Oh yeah. You've been in my house. You know I got a library. This is not a house, it's a library. So, Leslie,
Yes.
Is there anything else you want to ask Leon?
Well, I agree with you, Leon, about chucking books so far that, if they're not written by our people. However, I do know that there have been some books that have been written about our people that these were the voice that we didn't have before we could write and stuff. So I would say that if you are asked to look at specific content, really research that content if it's not written by our people, compare with what is written by our people or what and then speak about it, because there have been some books that have been written that are good. Now, as far as Western education is concerned, I don't believe in Western education, because I think that Western education, although yes, I totally believe in getting a degree and everything, because that's how you have to navigate in this world. But what I have learned in history books throughout my life has been all wrong and errant, and from the perspective of his story and not necessarily ours. It's sad that's what has happened, and I don't know how we are going to infiltrate that. Maybe it's just us getting a degree and then coming up with our own institutions and educations and writing our own books. But sadly, that's what's there, and it's either a lack of consideration for our people, or just ignorance, or is it strategic? And that's how you have to judge it from that standpoint. I once told somebody that in my history, and I'm going to tell my age here, I was born in 1962.
Oh, you old.
Yeah, I'm old, right? Old, but old, but look young. Never tell your age.
Right.
So the thing is that I remember when I was in school, I read nothing really about the indigenous community. I learned about the mound builders because we were from Missouri. And so we had to learn that. We were educated on that. But what was true history was not actual history of the mound builders and the sacredness of that land. I mean, that now is turned into an amusement park.
Mm-hmm.
Or the Mandans that were along the Mississippi River that encountered Lewis and Clark, and nothing was ever said about how those people were wiped out by smallpox and blankets strategically. I can count on one hand about how many Black people I was told about in my classes, and all 5 of the people that we were told about were people that I would consider to be agitators in some way. And so they had to talk about these people like Martin Luther King or Harriet Tubman, but it was only like 5 people. And then I found out later that if you wanted to learn more about people of color, you had to take a specialty class if you were in college, if you got it that far. If you were able to financially support yourself and go to college through scholarships and stuff like that, then you could take an elective course and learn. But most people don't do that if they're doing their degree, because they're going there specifically for a degree and they're focused on all the courses that are, geared towards their degree. So therefore, there's an avenue that is overlooked that we're not learning from it. We now have, social media, and you have to dive through the minutia of social media because a lot of untruths are on there, but a lot of truths are on there as well. Yeah. Go ahead. No, go ahead. What you were going to say?
One of the books that really, really went in depth, and I've still got the original copy that I got 30 some years ago, Where White Men Fear to Tread by Russell Means. Russell Means in that book told a true story about the Wounded Knee thing. It was not called Wounded Knee, it was called the Greasy Grass, the Custer Slaughter. That's one book that I think should be in everybody's library, because Russell broke it down and told the truth like he always did. And he was one of the original founders of AIM, the American Indian Movement. And then you got Vine Deloria, God is Red. I mean, it's just so many books out there that our people have written, but they don't get the publicity and advertising that the white folks get for their mess.
Because it's contrary to American history. I mean, this is something that America doesn't like to see, is their dirty laundry, especially from the perspective of the marginally, disenfranchised. So, that's it. But I encourage you, Leon, to please write a book. Please, 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 because it is definitely needed.
Write the book, Leon. Your uncle
write the book.
Go ahead.
The largest genocide in the world is right here in this land. It's the largest genocide estimate of, I want to say, 6 million to 200,000 after the germ warfare, the smallpox blanket you were talking about. That happened on the East Coast first, and then there was a tactic they used out here. But yeah, I read Russell's book a few times. I loved it. And one of the things that stuck out to me was how the federal government enacted what's called the Counterintelligence Program, the COINTELPRO.
Yep.
And what they did was assassinate leaders in the the movement. Like, that was their way to silence the movement. It was first incarcerate them on some bogus charges, and then if they didn't be quiet after that, then start taking out their family members. Like John Trudell, he lost his whole wife and kids.
Yeah.
No one knows who did that. And then those killings in Pine Ridge that they were trying to pin on AIM. Some say the federal agents did that, or other entities, because there's a lot of people that don't like Native resistance. I had this dialogue a couple months ago. My people and our people have been in resistance since day one. We're still in resistance. 1883, the Federal Indian Offense Act was enacted. In 1978, the American Religious American Indian Religious Freedom Act was in. So
That's right.
1883 to 1978, we are just now fully free. I was born, I hate to age myself too. I was born in 1978, so I am the first full generation in ceremony. All the relatives I went to ceremony with, they were doing it underground. They didn't care what the federal government said or did to them. They believed in the ceremony. And my dad has never been to ceremony until he started coming to support me. And he said it's changed his life because he was part of AIM too. He was at the gunfight. He was out there helping the people in the most hardest ways. He was there. So he's part of AIM in the first beginning. So I would
Back
say
in the
I'm proud of that
1970s.
resistance.
In the early 1970s. I
Mhm.
remember when AIM came to Washington, D.C. and took over the Bureau of Indian Affairs, and Nixon was in office. Oh, he didn't like that.
My friend Ike was part of that. I was in office with him a couple years ago, and he was telling me about it. And then we had another relative in Minnesota, and on the other side of South Dakota, he was part of it too. So I was like, man, you guys should be up here telling these stories to these young people because we got a huge fight on our hands.
Mm-hmm.
Fight for equity. And your story is the truth of survival and resilience and strength.
Well, I think that's the reason why the Creator has kept me here as long as I'm here, because I have stories to tell, truths to enforce. Um, I don't know whether you know this or not, Leon, but um, Leslie, I just talked to my doctor before I got on the air, and I'm having the surgery within the next 7 days. So I'm asking everybody that knows me, you don't even have to know me, send some prayers up, burn some sage, burn some sweetgrass, send some prayers up for me, because this is a very serious surgery that I'm having on my heart. And I need to be here to tell the story and to help people. So y'all pray for me, please.
You know that we will. And I wanted to say this too. It's formats like this where people, now, everybody has to look at the visual. They have to see these they have to, with social media and everything like that. This is how people get their history. This is how people get their access. And so formats like this, platforms like this are the best ways to kind of inform our audiences about our people, our history, our past. Supplement that with a book, and supplement that with community, and actually going to the community and actually going in and learning these things for yourself. But if it wasn't for these kind of formats, I don't know what we would do, because I've seen such a resurgence of our people, indigenous TikTok, indigenous Instagram, people telling the truth. I mean, literally telling the truth that we haven't been able to have an access to or actually be able to utilize before. So, you know, uh, thank God, thank the Creator for these, because that's important. Utilizing this tool is very important, and
Yes.
they can't stop you from telling the truth on here. They
They-
really can't.
Yeah. I just want to thank those two people that just sent up prayers for me. And I will be praying for you too. My brother Sean. Thank you, bro. And Miguel Jones, Stones of Hope. Thank you too. So I'll be praying for all of y'all. Okay.
So we have about 10 minutes before we are going to close this show. I kind of want to give Leon the platform here.
Yeah.
Leon, what are your future plans? What is it that you're going to, outside of writing this book, that you're going to be doing? And where can people find you and get in touch with you and follow you, your success stories, and find out what you're doing in the community?
I have a Facebook. You can look me up under my name. I have it private, but if I'll definitely add you if you want. I also am working on the third nonprofit I'm working on is we're gonna entitle it Rosebud Recovery, and we're going to focus on getting our relatives into treatment. If they want to go to inpatient treatment program for either substance misuse, mental health, or codependency. We want to start looking at that. And then we're going to start working on building some aftercare community housing for people who want to live in recovery. And then start on some social recovery movement work in the community, and hopefully build some 12-step programming around town. We're having a meeting on it in a couple weeks, so our nonprofit should be up. The nonprofit that I worked on I was the chairman of the board for a while was called Rosebud Scholarship Fund, and our vision was to fully fund our tribal members to college. Rosebud Scholarship Fund is doing well now, so I've jumped on with Project Russo, and we're working on college retention. We're starting at 8th grade and the 12th grade. We're coaching them on what they need to do to be successful in college, because for in the local data is for every 5 Native Americans that enter the state for gentle institutions, they only one of them graduates. So it's our retention rate is around 25%. And then excuse me. Once we get this other nonprofit going, we just launched a sexual assault prevention research center in Pine Ridge. We got a huge grant for $3.2 million. And what we're going to do is we're going to teach the youth how to identify sexual perpetration, how to report it to a mandated reporter, and ultimately how to defend themselves in the case of being sexually assaulted. Because we see that as an underlining factor that a lot of trauma stems from, and that a lot of people aren't talking about. So what we're finding out is we're reducing rape by 60% in the communities we worked in before by implementing cultural intervention too. So a lot of our work is culturally intersected. So, and well, with our Rosebud recovery vision is we really want to focus on bringing that ceremonial aspect to the forefront. We're working with our medicine people, going through ceremony, getting the guidance and the directions on what to do. So that's where we're at now, and we really want to get a lot of our people into sobriety, get them into higher education, so we can start working on changing our communities.
Okay. The other thing is, I think we need to try to find some funding to help our medicine people. Yeah, because a lot of the medicine people are very poor people. They got all the knowledge, they got the connection to the Great Spirit, but they don't have any money. So we need to think about trying to help them too.
I think
That's
a
going
good
to be
idea.
part of our initiative, because I'm like you, Jay. I don't think any of them should try to be working anywhere. They should just be doing what they're tasked to do, and then like they're also ordered not to ask for money too for their services. So
Mhm.
unfortunately, whenever we get a medicine men and medicine women involved, it's known that you have to give them an honorarium because they don't have jobs. So most of the time they're tending to trauma, they're tending to sicknesses, they're taking on these sicknesses of the people. So you kind of have to take care of our people, right? A star blanket, you can't put a star quote in your gas tank. You got to give them some funding, and you got to give them some food. And we just donated some propane to one of our spiritual leaders yesterday. About 4 of us got together and pitched in, because we want to make sure our relatives got heat. So we take care of our people, and that's what I think some of the funding should go to too.
Absolutely.
Leon, we were just having this conversation earlier today.
Mhm.
Jay and I were just having this conversation. I actually want to get in touch with you because on something else outside related to my job. But thank you so much for doing that. Please keep us posted as the progress of Rosebud Recovery as we go along. And as he said, you can find him on Facebook. He has a private page, everybody, so he can't just keep taking in everybody if he doesn't know you. I'm sure he has to be connected with someone that knows you, that knows you, that knows you.
Mhm.
But once you get up and running, please let us know how we can support you in the efforts, because you're doing such great work, in Pine Ridge, Rosebud, which is 2 large communities that are in need. And you said something. You're looking at trauma from a deeper level. People that are hurt other people, and so if we can just go from that standpoint, then we can cure a lot, because we'll continue to hurt one another,
Yep.
if we're
And
not
also,
healed.
Yeah, Rosebud. Sorry to interrupt you, but
No, go ahead.
Rosebud Recovery is a um uh, um excuse me, is a public page on Facebook. So I'll always be administering that. And then I also put in our chat oayeluta.org. We put Uncle Rick Two Dogs on our payroll so he can conduct our ceremonies for us. And that's a full nonprofit located in Rapid City. We do traditional healing through that. And if you go on our website, we have tons of cultural teachings. Then you could just watch the YouTubes if you want. So I put that in the chat if you want to share that. That's the other nonprofit I worked on too. But we're bringing it home with Rosebud Recovery, so we're going to be really focusing. And I live in my home community, and so that's what we really want to build, that vision.
There's a lot of great communities out there: Rosebud, Pine Ridge, Kyle, Yankton. I mean, we just got them everywhere out there, and we need to do whatever we can to bring them all together again. Thank you so much, Leon. Would you come back again?
Yeah, invite me back, Jay. I'll definitely love come talking with you.
Okay. Leslie, you got anything to say?
I just want to thank you, Leon, for doing such a good work in the community and helping to change lives. I mean, people don't understand, how hard that really is by taking on other people's trauma to help them heal, because it's such an exchange of spirit. And so, we are always here if you want to talk. I know that Jay is there if you want to, talk to him to help you through this journey, because this is what you were meant for, but it doesn't necessarily mean that you're always geared up to do it. So I'm going to be sending up a lot of prayers for you, and you also, Jay, with your circumstance, but sending a lot of prayers for you because you're doing such good work for so many people. And this is the way that you should be, doing, as a community leader. You're doing that. You put yourself in a position to heal people, and that's a very wonderful gift from the Creator. And I want to just say thank you.
I'm on it. I'm on it. And Leon, I know where you live, right?
You're always welcome out.
Yeah. So anyway, I just want to thank everybody. I want to thank you, Leslie. I want to thank Leon. And I would like to close with the words of my grandfather, my mother's father, South Carolina. We would go down there as little boys to visit with Grandpa and Grandma in the summertime. And he had this big oak tree. And he built this table around this big oak tree. And he would look at us and he would say to us, "Do you boys know what it's all about?" And we would look at each other. What is Grandpa talking about? So one of my cousins, Mikey said, "No, Grandpa, what is it all about?" He said, "Well, let me tell you this. It's not about the pigmentation of your skin or the color of your eyes. It's not about the texture of your hair. It's not about the clothes you wear. It is not about anything. And I want to tell you this before I tell you what it's all about." He said, "Your brother and your sister don't necessarily have to look like you to be your brother or your sister. We're all members of that same family, the human family." Then he would stand up and put his right hand over his heart and look at us. "Do you know what it's all about yet?" "No, Grandpa. It's how you treat my heart. That's what it's all about. Got nothing to do with your color, tribal affiliation, or where your ancestors are from. It's how you treat my heart." And I'll say it to you in the words of Cherokee, which is one of the people that I belong to. Danada, Goai, Wado. And Wado is thank you in Cherokee. Talk to you next week.